Like, your cash flow problem isn't my problem. You can't get divorced from your investors.
And when did you know the business was scalable?
Oh my God, it's so painful. When you're growing so fast, the people that you need today are like not the people you need in 6 months' time.
So is that what you're looking to do right now with AI consulting?
I think it's really terrifying because I don't see a way to change it. It's going to be such a scary, scary time to be alive. What I should have done is...
Today on Never Not Building, we're sitting down with one of Australia's most prolific entrepreneurs, Taryn Williams. She went from being a model at 15 to launching Wink Models at just 21 to raising millions in venture capital for the right fit. With not one, but two successful exits under her belt, Taryn truly talks the talk and walks the walk. Taryn has lived the founder roller coaster, bootstrapping, raising capital, going up against industry Goliaths, and learning the hard truths about hustle, leadership, and scaling. In this episode, we'll unpack how she spotted opportunities that others missed, what it really takes to disrupt an industry, and her own journey to launching an AI consultancy business. Taryn's journey, above all, proves you should never stop building. Let's start right from the beginning. Obviously, you're very beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
You started
I'll come here all the time.
You started as a model.
That's right.
As a teenager.
Yes.
And then you worked all the way to founding multiple multi-million-dollar companies to Wink Models. At just 21 years old. So not that long ago.
Thank you. Keep it up.
Tell us all about that. Did you learn anything necessarily from, being a model to starting a business and being an entrepreneur? How did it all play out?
Yeah. I probably didn't realize it at the time, but being a model, you're actually surrounded by so many entrepreneurial people on a day-to-day basis. So you're working with, best in breed photographers, makeup artists, creative directors, art directors. A lot of those people are self-employed or work on a contract by contract basis on very different types of clients. So they're having to be really adaptable. They're having to problem solve. They're used to working under pressure. And so unlike some people who had maybe had a very linear career and had worked their way up at a bank or whatever, I wasn't quitting and leaving a stable 9-to-5 job. I had, I guess, a lot more flexibility in starting the agency, but I also didn't have that sort of insurmountable fear of going, oh my gosh, I can't do this, or I'm going to have to give up my really safe paycheck. I really could just kind of go, I've seen all of these people around me build really sustainable careers. They've worked really, really hard. They're very entrepreneurial. I think this is probably something that I can do too. Okay.
And then it led you to founding Wink
That's
Models. Right. Been around a long time now. Yeah. Very successful business, but it was founded based on the inefficiencies of the industry.
Yeah.
How did that come about, and when did you find that little gap into the market?
So it was probably my first-hand experience of the modelling industry and just seeing so many pain points that I was just really flabbergasted by. And, imagine I was sort of 15 to 19 in that sort of key area of my life. It's wild that I was kind of having these thoughts, but I was like, why does it take 60, 90 days for me to get paid for that modelling job I did? That doesn't happen in any other industry. And the answer from an agency or from a client was always that, well, we have to wait for the client, let's say Coca-Cola, to pay the advertising agency, and then the advertising agency to pay the casting agency, and then the casting agency to pay the talent agency, and then we pay you. I'm like, but that's how every business in the world works. The courier company that the courier works for, he still gets paid every fortnight or weekly or whatever. It doesn't matter that Coca-Cola haven't paid the supply chain company that hired the courier to deliver the stuff. Like, it's all businesses. Like, your cash flow problem isn't my problem. You need to be able to run your business and be able to manage cash flow. That's the premise of building a business. So I was like, this is ridiculous. You have all of these amazing models who were dropping out of the industry because it wasn't financially viable for them. They couldn't do the basics. They couldn't pay their rent. They were having to juggle trying to go to university and having to have a part-time job and all of these other things just because of this inefficiency of the system. And there was also this real rule by fear culture between agents and talent and clients where there wasn't a lot of transparency from a client's perspective to an agent's perspective of what models were available. They might request one model, but the agency will say, oh, I'll put this person forward instead because I think, we can maybe get a better rate for her, or we'll tell them that person's not available when maybe they are. And for a model, they had no idea of the jobs that were available on offer. They didn't get any visibility from their agency. And I'm quite old now that, it used to be that you had to call in the day before. And so like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you'd call your agent and you say, do I have any jobs tomorrow? And they go, no, nothing for you tomorrow. And so your whole life was kind of living on edge. And I thought, look, this cannot be this difficult. I mean, blissful naivety of youth, right? Like I'm 21 and I'm like, this can't be this difficult. I'm going to build an agency that pays everyone within 7 days. We're going to treat everyone with decency and respect. We're going to build like a family culture, because you can imagine that sort of that 15 to 25, 26-year-old age group, people are going through a lot of big life changes. They're moving out of home. They may be going through their first big breakup, getting their first mortgage or their first credit cards, all of that, probably going overseas sometimes for the first time. So they're big formative periods in someone's life. And normally you would have a cohort of people around you in a full-time job who are your colleagues, who you could go to for advice. And as a model, you're working with different people every single day. You don't have that. So I was like, well, if I could build that family values, really look after our talent, and our clients could see that this was mutually beneficial for them, because we had amazing models who would drop anything to be available for our clients, who would go above and beyond, do 110% because they knew we were going to look after them.
So was there any businesses like that existed at the time, or was this like, this is brand new?
This is totally brand new. Everyone else, all of the other agencies were probably 45, 60, 90-day payment terms, and probably maybe 5 years after I launched the agency, some came down to 30 days. Most are still sort of 30. So.
Did you get any angry calls? Like, obviously you're going through this disruption of an industry. Did anyone get upset at you? Because obviously you had contacts on both sides, right?
Yeah. I was very lucky that I'd built a really, really loyal base on both sides of the market. So talent who were willing to come and join me and believed in what I was trying to do.
Yep.
And clients who really loved it. They were like, this is fantastic. I mean, they didn't change the terms that they paid on. Like, they still paid us within 30, 60, 90 days. We bankrolled all the payments for our talent. So clients could still pay us whenever. We would just make sure that we managed cash flow and made sure that we invested in our talent first. So.
And when did you know the business was scalable? Was it a 1 month thing? Was it a 3 month thing? Was it a 12-month thing? When did you know it had legs? Because, a lot of businesses don't last longer than 12 months these days.
Yeah. It was really tough. I remember the first 12 months were really tough. I was like working every hour that God sends. I remember vividly being up on Google and like going through the first 20 pages of Google, looking at photographers and then cold reaching out to them, like emailing, calling them, sending them comp cards of models and saying, hey, we're a new agency. Like, just really, really hustling and putting my back into it. But the response was amazing. We had so many people who were like, the other thing that probably Wink was doing differently at the time was a real focus on cultural and age diversity. So there wasn't many agencies in Australia that had any sort of ethnic diversity, size diversity, age diversity. We're probably the first to do that. So there was a lot of commercial brands. Like, one of our very first big contracts was with Nokia mobile phones back in the day. And they needed a whole heap of very diverse looks, ages for all of their TV commercials and print ads. And they're like, this is amazing. They're great looking people, but they've got something unique about them, or they've got personality and they're gorgeous, but they really look like a cool person who could be using this Nokia phone, or a business person who could be using this Nokia phone. So that was probably the tipping point where we started to get big international campaigns and brands reaching out to us saying, like, this is a service we really need.
Yeah, good on you, because obviously and we're going to talk about this in a second, the AI industry and how it's changing the game, and looking forward to all of the learnings you found at Harvard as well. But it's crazy how long it's been, 15 years or so. It's crazy how much it's changed.
Yeah.
Let's talk about The Right Fit, a business that you sold not too long ago. It was your first real tech startup.
Yep.
What made you move into the tech side of the business? Because
completely different. Yeah.
Completely different.
Could not be more different to a traditional agency business. And I think probably naively did not realize how different like a traditional standalone agency business was to building a high growth tech company that was venture capital backed. So I'd actually built an end-to-end onboarding, calendar management and payroll integration software for Wink, because we had about 650 models Australia-wide. And the nuance with models is that they're all employees. They're not subcontractors. It's carve out in the ATO law, complicated system, but they all have to be employees. So we're managing tax and super and reporting obligations for like 650 people. And there's just so many opportunities for human error too. And the fast turnaround nature of the industry meant that we would have a client call today and say, we need to have a casting this afternoon. We need all of your 5'9" blondes who are size 7 shoe and this measurements to come in for casting at 3 o'clock. And you can imagine it would just be scrambles of bookers on the phones going, who's available, calling people. And I was like, this is not scalable. Like, we need to build a system. Back in the day, I was like, we need to build an app. So built a platform basically that manages all of our talent end to end. We can do availability checks, manages all of their shifts, their schedules, their payments, expense claims, sizing, photos, measurements, the whole 9 yards, right through to invoicing clients, reconciling payments. It was a bigger than Ben-Hur system. And it cost an extraordinary amount of money and it was so, so painful. But I got to the end of that build and I was like, oh my God, this is really cool. You can actually solve business problems using technology. Like I'd seen it firsthand how much it transformed that business and allowed us to scale. We didn't have to keep adding headcount. And so I was really excited and I was like, what I should have done is build this as a marketplace, because it was just around the time the Airtasker and Freelancer had launched. And I was like, instead of it having, basically it comes to the agency and then the agency builds a job and sends it out, we could have just had clients doing that piece for themselves. And so I went and saw a bunch of our clients and I was like, look, if I was to build a marketplace where you could find everything that you needed, photographers, models, actors, influencers, stylists, creative directors, video, whatever, in one place, and you could just build an ad and send it out, but we looked after all the insurance and payments and security on the back end, would you use that? And they were like, yeah, that would be really, really helpful. And I was like, okay. So this time I knew a lot more about building tech products and I was like, okay, I don't want to do it the really painful way I did last time. I'm going to in-house the dev team, hire a product manager, build it out, build an MVP. I didn't know what that was the first time around. So built an MVP this time and went out and got sort of a bit of an indication of product market fit before we really invested in sort of growing and scaling the business and building out the big Ben-Hur sort of system in the end.
Okay. And I understand you sold it a few years ago. Is there a time where you're like, I'm done? Like I've had enough. I don't want to continue to scale
there were so many
anymore.
times in that business. It was such a hard journey. Like I think a lot of people see all of the glamorous, exciting success from the outside and the awards and the international officer. I'm sure it's very similar for you. Like people, oh my God, that's amazing. It must be such an easy journey. And you're like, oh my God, it's so painful. It is so hard. Like raising many rounds of venture capital, trying to find the right people. And when you're growing so fast, the people that you need today are like not the people you need in 6 months' time. So you might find a great CMO and then 6 months' time you're like, Jesus, now we need someone who has international expansion experience or whatever it might be. So it was really, really painful. There was so many times I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. Why did I give up my beautiful, cushy, divine agency to come and run this crazy thing? But we received a lot of inbound acquisition approaches probably for the 2 or 3 years before I sold the business. And we got pretty far down the path with a peer group out of the US. And then I was like, you know what? We really need to just structure and formalize and run a process. I'd navigated the business through COVID. Thankfully, the business was cash flow positive, which was very, very rare, I think, for a lot of high growth tech companies in that period. So I was fortunate that, we were masters of our own destiny. We didn't have to go out and raise capital. We didn't have to sell the business, which put us in a really strong position to just run a good process, find the right partner, and sort of.
And I think when you're not desperate, I think the private equity companies or trade buyers, whoever they might be, they can sense it. Yeah. So for the people that out there that don't know about selling a business, how did it work in your case? Did you need to stay for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Was there a handover period?
Yeah.
I know a lot of trade buyers, a lot of private equity companies, they all operate very differently. But
yes.
for other people that don't understand it, how did it work in your case?
I found it really, really challenging because I wanted the right thing for my investors. I wanted the right thing for my team and my staff who had carried like big rocks uphill for me for a long time. They all had equity in the business as well. Good. And then I wanted what was right for me personally as well. So it was a really, really tough balance to get that right in thinking about what the right deal was. And I had so many sleepless nights where, you're comparing offers on paper and you're going, well, this one I have to do a 4-year handover, but I have the opportunity of earning even more upside every single year if we hit these targets. This one I have to do a 12-month handover and they're going to keep all of my team and, they're going to expand the brand here. It was really, really challenging because all of the deals looked very, very different. Some were a mixture of cash and stock, like script in the parent company that was buying us. Some were purely cash. Some were purely script. Some involved me taking an international role. So there were so many different things to consider and it was a really, really challenging period. I remember actually sitting with my chairman and him going, we can't tell you what to do here. You have to choose what's right for you personally. Obviously, you're always going to do the right thing by investors and shareholders and all of those things, but they're like, you kind of really got to make the call here. Like if you want to roll the dice and do a 4-year earn out with the opportunity of having a larger upside on the back, you just sort of got to make those decisions. So it is really tough. And I think having a really good sounding board around you when you start working those things through, but also understanding the minutiae of all of the structures of the deal, because there were so many things I learned through that process, and having great advisors around me who were like, they're actually asking for, they're going to get rid of your liquidity preference on this, or, they're going to completely, get rid of the ESOP plan, or, a lot of things that I was like, oh, wow, that fundamentally changes what this deal looks like for, various different shareholders or pref shares or my shareholding.
Yeah, okay, got you. Because we're obviously going to get onto mentors and a lot of people that you've probably balance your guidance on, or what were you doing in business? Because I've made a million mistakes, and
same, a million and one.
There's a lot of things that you can pass on to a lot of people that are trying to build. But there's something you mentioned there about that company, was that you gave people that worked in the business equity.
Yeah.
Why is that? I've always teed it up. Should I? Shouldn't I? I'm always scared of people taking advantage.
Yeah.
What led you to that point? And was it a success, and would you do it again?
Great question, because I think it's very different in traditional agency businesses, or really, non-technical businesses. In tech companies, it's much more common to have what's called an ESOP plan, an employee shareholders option plan, that is usually 10 to 15%. When you start the company, it's put aside, and it's before you even raise capital. There's a separate pool of shares there that are used for early hires. And basically, it's predominantly because you're building something ideally that's going to 10, 20, 30x returns, and you realistically can't afford the top engineer from Google on $450,000 a year to come and work in your startup. So you're essentially saying to people, hey, I'd love you to maybe take a massive pay cut and come and believe in this idea and my journey and this belief. I'm going to be able to pay you $200,000 a year, but I'm going to give you this much equity, which theoretically in time is going to be worth 10 times as much as you would have earned if you just stayed at Google. And you're going to have a lot more involvement in the business, in shaping the product, in what that looks like, and the ability to build something that's going to give you real wealth over time. So it's much more common in startups than it is in, I think, sort of general SMEs maybe. Would I do it again? Yes, there's definitely people who are highly incentivized by equity and really understand it. I've had other staff members over the years who don't understand it, who find it a little bit paralyzing, especially in Australia. It comes with tax implications, and it is something that you have to go away and get advice on and set up a family trust usually and all those things. So a lot of people can be like, I don't know, I'd prefer to have like a $5,000 bonus, and sort of relinquish that. But I think as the market has got a bit more sophisticated in Australia, and there's much more of there's been some really successful exits or companies where employees have realised real wealth. Like you look at the Canvas and the Atlassians and people who were early stage there who have gone on to be multi-millionaires. I think it's really, it can really incentivize people. And I wanted people to be on a journey with me in the trenches every single day. I wanted my people to be like thinking about the business in the morning shower. I think you can't build a business that is inherently disrupting an industry and changing how something works unless they are all in 110%, 24/7, 7 days a week.
I think that's a very important fact. Me as a founder is always believe that my employees should believe in the business as much as I do. But the truth is it's not their business. So I think there's certain times where you can give equity.
Yeah.
I think there's people who deserve equity, but when I've done it in the past, majority of the time, not every time, you really see the step up of that individual.
Yeah.
So you want everyone fighting for the same outcome, which is excellent.
I do think there's also been a cultural shift though. Like I think probably when you and I first met, 15 years ago, a long time ago, there was a real hustle culture and people were really leaning into building their brand, building their worth, wanting to advance their careers. They were like, I want to get from A to B as quickly as possible. I want to be a manager. I want to, I'm willing to put it all in. I'm willing to, do courses on the side, whatever it is that's going to help me build a big, amazing career. And that's what I want. And I'm really excited about that. I definitely think there's been a cultural shift, which I'm sure is for a lot of reasons. And where the generation coming behind us, I think, is maybe not so incentivized by those things. And they want to have a more holistic life. They want to be able to have work-life balance. They want to be able to travel and take annual leave, and not saying you shouldn't take annual leave, but take 5 weeks annual leave, and they want to be able to have I think that maybe work is a smaller portion of how they are and who they identify as human beings. And so I think that's a really tough cultural shift for when you're an employer and you're looking for people with hustle and grit and grind and tenacity that you can help mentor and shape into the next chapter.
So let's talk about that for a second before we move on, because I got my own opinion on it. When we did start, a long time ago, it was different. I don't care what anyone said. It was very, very different. Yeah. You could actually work for 5, 6, 7 years and afford to buy a house. Yep. Now it's actually a joke.
Yeah.
So how do you think we change this? Because the way I look at it is, if my kids come up, they're 18 years old. By the time they're 18 years old, the average house is $15 million or whatever it might be. They're not going to be able to, afford a home.
Yeah.
And us as entrepreneurs, we want to find the best staff.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wouldn't want to work, 15, 16, 17-hour days to eventually buy a house out west for $1 million or $2 million, whatever it might be. What do you think we should do to change that?
I think it's really terrifying because I don't see a way to change it. I think if anything, AI is only going to exponentially increase the divide between the haves and the have-nots. I think that, when you look at it at a macro level, the companies that are going to win in this space are the ones that have the most data. So it's going to be the Googles, the Metas of the world who already have, one, the resources to be able to deploy AI at scale and invest in building great AI platforms, and two, have access to the data. So it's going to be very, very hard for small businesses and startups to get traction and build and compete against these. And so you're going to have a saturation of wealth in a smaller number of people's hands who are going on to make lots and lots of money. And then you're going to have a whole bunch of displaced workers who no longer have jobs or employment opportunities. And I think for the first time, people are really scared because it's knowledge workers. I think historically maybe we haven't been as concerned because it was blue collar workers who were maybe being replaced by the Industrial Revolution. There was changes. All these things have happened previously, right? People use the example of when the internet first came about and like all of the transformation that caused in how we did things. But this is a fundamentally different shift and a fundamentally different change.
The wealth divide is just becoming more and more predominant.
Yeah.
In the true state of never not building, we're going to be talking about your new venture, which is called Online Model Academy.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about this business.
Oh, I know. I'm crazy for continuing to do more things. So yes, this one is probably 4 or 5 months old. And essentially this is a little bit of a sort of almost philanthropic project in that I had so many people who would always come to me for advice and say, my daughter wants to be a model, or I want to be a model, or I'm thinking about considering this, but I don't know where to start. And I'm really intimidated by the industry, or I've sent my photos off to an agency, I've never heard back and I don't know why, or am I even suitable to be a model? Because the industry has changed so much, especially with social media influencers and brands engaging people like that to be in their campaigns as well. A lot of the traditional rules of like height requirements or size requirements have kind of gone out the window. And so I had all of these people coming to me and I went and spoke to a bunch of people in the industry I admire. So Danielle Ragnard, who was the ex-head of IMG in Australia, and Jez Smith, who used to be a judge on Australia's Next Top Model and is like a top international fashion photographer. Max May, a whole bunch of like fantastic models who have built really amazing international careers. And I just said I feel like if we all work together to build a course that actually answered all of these questions, then every single one of us that gets asked these questions on a day-to-day basis and are trying to manually do this one by one, hand-to-hand combat, via Instagram DMs or having a coffee with, your friend's cousin who wants to become a model. I was like, surely we can fix this and demystify it. Because I can't think of another industry where there isn't training courses, where there's no information available. There's no certification program. Like if you want to be a chef, if you want to be, all of even if you want to be an Uber driver, there's like online training and accreditation to go through. So I was like, surely we can fix this and build, an online platform that's easily accessible anywhere in the world. I didn't want it to be geographically restrained either. So people in rural areas internationally can have access to this course and learn from people who are best in breed, who have got decades of experience and can say, here's everything that you need to know about all of the different sectors and, go through that program. And what I wanted people to come out the other side was with a feeling of this industry is for me or it's not. I wanted them to be informed before they go out and decide to join an agency or invest a whole bunch of money in building a portfolio or anything like that, because I think a lot of people come into the industry really misinformed and not realizing the challenges, how demanding the lifestyle can be, how little flexibility there is, the demands of the routine and all of those things. So I think I wanted them to go in informed.
Okay. And just to set the record straight, is it about who you know in this industry?
Look, I think building a network in any industry is super important. And I think a lot of my success has come from the people that I know and people who have, advocated for me when I was not in a room and put my voice forward when I couldn't be there and say, hey, Taryn would be great for this, or we should reach out to Taryn about that opportunity. So I think in any industry, it's like super, super important. And so I think modeling is the same. I think if you can build a great network, if you can prove yourself, if you can be a joy on set, if you can be, always deliver great results, always be on time, I think all of those things really work in your favor.
You talk about a lot of your success being around, being the reason you achieved so much was because of so many great people around you. How important do you think mentorship, the guidance of people that have been there and done that plays a part into this?
A huge amount. I mean, I look back on it now. Probably didn't realize what I was doing was very different to other people. I just had absolutely no shame in asking for help and hitting people up for a cold coffee or asking advice. I remember being maybe 19 and meeting an advertising agency owner on set for a photo shoot, and I thought he was really interesting. He'd built quite a big empire. He was working with amazing brands, and I found him on LinkedIn afterwards and sent him a message and said, hey, I don't know what I want to do next. I'm currently modeling. This is what I studied. This is my interest areas. Would it be okay? Could I have a coffee with you and just pick your brain and ask you some advice? Like, this is where I think my career might go. I'd love some more information on what advertising could look like, considering that. Or, I don't know many young people that do that these days and who have that sort of tenacity and hustle.
I'd rather just text and pick up the phone.
Yeah, exactly. And so I did that a lot through my career. And probably the other thing was that I was always close the loop with them. So, I would go and have that meeting, get that advice. I'd really come prepared. Like, here's all the things. I've spent a lot of time researching this person online. I know you did these things. Was that course great? How did you get into this? How did you, whatever it was. And then, a month later, I'd come back and say, okay, you told me to read this book. I've read that book. I've listened to this podcast. I've gone and done that course. I met with this other person that you recommended. I've done these 5 things. I'm stuck on this one. Can I have help with this one? And they'd be like, gosh, I don't know about you. I've mentored so many people in my career, and it's so, so rare that after you spend a bunch of time with someone, give them all of this advice. Very rarely do you get a thank you, and very rarely do you have someone come back saying, I did all the things that you asked.
Yeah, don't get me started on the appreciation side of things.
Yeah.
And just for everyone out there, I get a lot of messages every single day. Can I get a mentor? Can I get a coffee? Like, no.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no, you can't. But if you do want that, at least do some research.
Yeah.
At least put in some work. We get all these people that want jobs all the time.
Yeah.
If you just email your resume, I'm not going to give you a job.
Correct.
But if you go and do and you go that extra effort and you do that extra thing, you can get in the room with almost anyone.
Correct. I totally agree with that. And I think the difference between probably when you and I were starting and now is that there's so much more publicly available information. Like, there wasn't a whole bunch of great podcasts. There wasn't free YouTube information that can teach you almost anything. And there was LinkedIn, but were many people using it? Not really. Now there's so much free courses on Coursera. There's so much amazing information that you can do so much groundwork, find the very, very specialist people. I've had people reach out to me who are, looking to start a fashion brand and are wanting supply chain advice out of China. And I'm like, how am I the right person to talk to about that? Really get down and, find the granularity of exactly where you're stuck and where you need help, and then go and find that person that can, once you've done your research, and go to them with a specific problem and be respectful of their time and their energy and their effort.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it's important. I know it's so hard starting a business right now, but you're right. There's so much information out there.
Yeah.
Before, when we started, obviously, I think it was Facebook that was around. But now there's a global reach. Yep. You're seeing 22-year-olds, 21-year-olds becoming multimillionaires, selling their courses, doing whatever it is. So yes, it is hard now, but don't put your head down and put your head in the sand and just think
I think the barriers to entry are even in the last 12 months have come down dramatically. When I was building Hash Gifted, we still had to go and hire, 2 full stack engineers. We hired engineers out of San Francisco. So no small investment there, an amazing product manager. The investment just to get started would be, paralyzing for a lot of people unless you went out and raised capital for an idea. And obviously I didn't want to do that. So now you could build using no-code software, a prototype, have it spun up, start testing, put it in front of some users, get some early traction, have something functioning probably within a month, and then be able to go and see investors and say, I've acquired this many users on both sides. I've tested this prototype, and you may not even need to raise to build the rest of the product. Like, it's just phenomenal.
So let's talk about raising money. Before we get onto AI, I want to talk about raising money. Another misconception is people think that just because they have a logo and they have a brand, they raise money.
Yeah.
That's not the case, right?
Oh my gosh, it's my pet peeve as well.
Andrew, can I have 100,000? Sure, mate. Here you go. What do you recommend founders to raise money now? Is that necessary to be able to succeed? I know even for my stuff, $1 million plus in salaries a month plus everything else.
Yeah.
It's hard, but I never had to raise money.
Yeah.
It took time. Do you recommend raising money now?
I think you need to know what you're raising for. Okay. And I think a lot of the people I see don't understand their basic unit economics, and they've maybe built something that they have seen there's maybe some early traction or some early interest, or people around them have told them this is an amazing idea. Usually they haven't really deeply explored the competitor landscape. And I think also in this market at the moment, what's being rolled out of Google, OpenAI, Meta is going to absolutely destroy so many businesses. So I think you have to be really abreast of what's changing in the macro landscape, and then really understand from a micro perspective, like who else is already operating in your space, even like locally. And then understand if you're going to raise, what are you raising for? If you're like, okay, I've got my unit economics down to, X and Y, and if I can put $20,000 more into customer acquisition a month, I can grow this business to here. Fantastic. Every investor would be like, I'll back growth any day. But if you're like, look, I need to build the product, and we think hypothetically like it's a $4 billion market, and we're going to be able to get 10% of that. You start looking at pretty lofty goals and ambitions. Maybe have a bit of a rudimentary financial model that has some pretty aggressive growth in it and wildly ambitious targets that you really, a lot of the time I see founders who don't really understand. They've maybe worked with an advisor who's gone, here's a financial model, and they've gone, okay, great. I'm like, what are you actually raising for? What are you trying to achieve? Do you think this is realistic? And a lot of the time people come to me and they're like, yeah, I'm raising it a, $20 million pre-money valuation. I'm like, where did that number come from? And they're like, oh, and it's, my friend's friend is a advisor and he told me. I'm like,
cool.
Go and see what the market will price this at. Yeah. Like, here's all of the issues I'm seeing in this. And they're like, oh God. So I think, my experience raising capital was amazing. I had incredible investors who opened doors, who expedited our growth, who helped with hiring, who added so much value around the boardroom table. They're just the pattern recognition. They've scaled so many different marketplaces. They'd seen so many different international market entries. They'd hired so many amazing top performing CEOs that having that pattern recognition was really beneficial for me. So I think, raising capital because you've got a very clear ask, you want great people around the table, bringing in strategic capital where they can actually add value, I think is a really, good thing. But I think only do it if you deeply understand what you're doing, because it can also go horribly, horribly wrong. You can't get divorced from your investors. They're your investors. You can buy them out, but otherwise there isn't an opportunity to go, we fundamentally disagree about the vision for this business or the growth plan for this business or the hiring plan for this business. Like if they're on your board and they're directors, then they've got an equal sway.
You're in bed together. It is what
exactly.
It is. So what would you say, I'm a founder, I've got my product, I'm all ready to go. What would you say the biggest focus is? Will it be around sales and marketing? Will it be around the product? You've scaled multiple businesses. What have you seen as the common denominator on scale for a lot of people listening out there?
Look, I think it's a tough one because it really varies by industry sector. But I think really knowing your customer and getting tight on your personas. I think a lot of people say my customer's everyone from 25 to 45. And I'm like, you're going to have to get a lot more granular than that. And so I think understanding your customer, understanding your unit economics. So what can you actually afford to go and spend to acquire new customers, and what's the payback period, and in a marketplace, what's the liquidity point? What do you need to actually make this a thriving business? In a SaaS company, like what's your churn? Like it sort of really varies from business to business. So I think just understanding what unit economics are really, really important for you, and having a plan to control or improve every single one of those. So whether it's like in a direct-to-consumer business, whether it's just increasing the average order value or new customers or traffic to site, I think would really depend. But I think at least knowing what those are and having a plan to control them.
I think it's
a
very
really
important
thing.
that you said straight off the bat that you should know your customer. I think a lot of founders get caught up where they're too good to call their customer.
Yeah.
Every now and then just call your customer, even if they're not spending too much, and just ask them for feedback.
Yeah. I did for almost the entire life of The Right Fit. I did the first and last hour of customer service every day. And it used to drive so many people in my team nuts. But I was like, I want to be close to the customer. I want to know the problems they're having, the challenges they're experiencing, the questions they're answering. And it just fundamentally changed how I built that product. Like there were so many ideas that I had for, changing that business that I never would have had if I hadn't been close to the customer. And I still do it in all of my ventures. Even on boards that I sit on, I'm like, I want to meet some of our customers. I want to really understand, like, what are their pain points? What are their challenges?
Okay, guess versus Goliath. AI versus Wink models. With AI now able to generate hyper-realistic talent, how does a traditional agency like Wink Models compete in today's landscape, and what can be done to protect the model's image and likeness from being replicated without their consent?
It's going to be such a scary, scary time to be alive because I think firstly at a macro level, you're going to see this across film, podcasting, music, like the IP rights are going to be really, really terrifying. I think at some point there will be some sort of legislation that comes out that says like X percentage of people in TV shows or in movies need to be real. Like I don't think any government globally will allow mass displacement of all of their creatives. So I think at some point there will be some sort of governance piece that happens. I also think really smart creators and talent will find ways to adopt AI to master their own image. So whether that's creating their own digital AI twin or avatar that they can use to be in multiple places at once and do multiple campaigns on a global basis. So I think there will be, cutting edge talent who will do that and adopt that. And then I think there will have to be systems that, for tracking things like deep fakes. And I think that probably won't start with the creative community. I think that will probably start from news and politics to ensure sounds terrifying, but like the safety of democracy more broadly.
AI consulting, AI changing the game completely, especially for your industry, especially for my industry.
Yep.
18 months ago, you did a Harvard course in Boston.
Yes. Yep.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I'd already started probably about 2.5, nearly 3 years ago. I'd started in this deep dark hole of AI, and it was probably maybe 6 months before ChatGPT came out, and I was like, wow, there is something really fascinating here. And I could see that our industries were really going to be fundamentally impacted. And so probably similarly to when I started The Right Fit, I was like, I've got two choices here. I can sit back and watch it steamroll me and all of my companies and be terrified, or I can go and, try and understand it, apply myself to being at the bleeding edge of it and look for opportunities. And I knew across all of my businesses and my board roles, the common threads were that we had really well-structured data, and they were all industries that were going to be definitely, I think all businesses will be, but definitely disrupted by AI. And that there was about to be a fundamental market shift in how our customers approached what they were doing. So I really wanted to understand that. So I went and did this course at Harvard. It was really, really interesting. I really loved it. And I met some amazing, amazing people. And I came back and I was like, right, I know this is the space that I want to work in next. And I want to be able to consume as much knowledge and play with as many tools. And it's incredibly challenging, like stay up to speed with what's going on. And I think probably 6 months ago, it got to the place where it was just moving so rapidly that it's impossible for anyone to stay up to date with every single tool or changes to all the different LLMs. But it was something that I was like, this is, I think, a real opportunity for businesses. And I think, again, there's so much information out there, which is exciting and great, but there's also so much noise. And I think getting cut through in a really saturated market and finding the signals amongst the noise is really, really hard. And so I started working with an amazing consultancy group that they've always specialized in growth consultancy, and we've just been working together to build out what this AI consultancy will look like, and working with some best in breed brands, both locally and internationally, on helping them decipher where are the signals, where are the opportunities for them in a business, and actually coming in and doing a diagnostic and getting really clear on, because it's very, very different from business to business, right? If you're a building services company versus a marketplace business versus a online agency, the use case is going to be very, very different. And so coming in and actually doing that diagnostic and then giving them transparency and visibility to where the opportunities are, where the threats are, and cost to be able to implement some of these tools, and build completely proprietary solutions for them as a business to unlock, revenue streams that they never would have thought of before, I think is really exciting. So,
and I think it's funny you say that, because the way I've looked at business right now, especially a lot of the baby boomer businesses, they're going on to retire.
Yep.
So their business, whatever it might be, those boring businesses, if you get them for cheap,
yep,
you can actually make them very exciting with AI. So
yes.
A lot of founders out there going, I want to create a fashion brand and I want to be the next White Fox or Showpo or whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be like that. There's still a lot of money in these old school businesses.
Yep.
They just need to adapt AI to it.
Absolutely. And they've already got the economies of scale in terms of, I actually was just speaking to someone about this recently who had built the Australia's largest roof tiling company, and they have hundreds of offices and lots of people who are out literally dealing with roof tiling on residential properties all over Australia. But it had no tech adoption, didn't even have a website at the time. And he was like, okay, I know I can fundamentally change this business using technology and AI and find cost savings, better economies of scale, and probably in 5 years' time sell this business for a huge multiple on the EBITDA.
So is that what you're looking to do right now with AI consulting?
Yeah.
Is that the main focus? Probably there's more opportunity in the old school businesses than there is in the new school, because at least they got some idea. In saying that, they're probably more excited about adopting it.
Yes, and it's also, the hard thing is you need to have the people change piece is really hard. So I think for every amazing idea or true innovation that you can do with AI, the blocker is always going to be the human beings involved. Less so now. Probably 12 months ago, I would have said, well, it's the quality of the data or the structure of the data. Now it's the human beings and their willingness to adapt and change, which is, human nature. I totally understand that. Like it's a fear, it's scary. And so I think you need to be able to take people and culture piece is really important. Like, how do we upskill our workers to be able to utilize these systems? How do we take them on that journey of what the future state of the business is going to look like? And is there retraining? Is there reskilling? Is there deployment into some of these new verticals? If we can find additional revenue streams that couldn't have existed before, how can we take people who might be being displaced from a particular vertical that's going to be shut down and redeployed to something that's going to be, a much more interesting job for them long term? So
where do you think business should start? Because there's a lot of noise going on, and they're thinking, oh, do I just go and chat? Even in my industry, oh yeah, I don't need to hire you. I just need to do ChatGPT and whatever.
Yeah.
Where do they start here though? Like, is they just reach out to you guys and go, we need help, or do you recommend they start reading up about it themselves?
I think having a little bit of information is a good idea. So like just a basic understanding of what's viable and what can be achieved. But I don't think you need to go down a deep, dark rabbit hole of trying to understand if there's a new, AI sales integration that you should be using, or, fundamentally thinking about your, complete changes to your business model. I think having people come in who, the benefits of working with consultancies is they've already seen so many different industries and sectors and expertise. They've seen what works, they've seen what doesn't, and they are at the bleeding edge of everything across, it would be impossible for you to keep up to date with every single innovation in, across MarTech, sales tech, consultancy, operations, so I think having people who have done that, built successful products, know what's available off the shelf versus what you need to build custom.
Yep.
I think just having someone come in and do a diagnostic as a first step and helping you understand, are you even ready to go through an innovation process? And if so, what would it look like? What would you need to spend? Where are the opportunities that could be maybe lower touch? Where are the biggest opportunities for you that's going to have the highest impact on whether it's revenue or EBITDA, and help you come up with a bit of a plan. Whether or not you choose to then go ahead and, we've had clients who go, oh my God, this is amazing, we now want to do all of it. And you're like, okay, that's a big adoption plan. Like, it might be a multi-million-dollar spend. We have other clients who are like, hey, you know what, we want to spend $100,000 this year and that's it. And we want to get these 2 or 3 really critical things for us done. And then, in 12 months time, we're going to focus on these things. So it can be sort of anywhere in that spread.
Okay. And it's good for almost every industry?
Yeah. That's a great thing about AI is it's completely industry agnostic, sector agnostic and business model agnostic as well. I do think some SaaS businesses, for example, are going to be heavily impacted. Like I think there's going to be some industries and business types that are going to be more impacted than others. But yeah, it's completely sector agnostic.
So Taryn, going from, just starting out, not knowing much about business to now sitting on boards, mentoring people, running multiple multi-million-dollar companies, there's that kind of, the weird conversation that everyone likes to talk around. It's the female founders, the hustle culture of female founders, the boss females and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Was it harder for you to start the business? Has that changed in the last few years in sort of the doors you can open?
Mm.
How was it affected in the female space?
Yeah.
Right now?
It's a really interesting question because I think when I started The Right Fit, I'd come from a media and talent industry, which is like quite heavily populated by female leaders, and marketing is, quite similar as well. So going into tech, I hadn't really no concept that I was about to enter an industry that was heavily, tech, venture capital, finance, all of those things, heavily male skewed. And so I was sort of like, I've run a company for 10 years at that point. I was like, I'm fine. I know how to, I haven't come up against any sort of discrimination. I didn't realize sort of how fundamentally different that would be in a heavily male skewed sector. And that there would be so many times in my career, especially in the first probably 5 years of The Right Fit, where I would often be the only woman in a room, like whether it's a networking event, whether it was a conference, whether it was, a founders meetup or a pitch night, I could often only be the only female, not only just female founder, but female at all in founding teams, in, venture capital. So I think the industry has come a long way, and at least there's so much more recognition. Like it's clearly identifiable that founding teams that have a female in them do fundamentally better than founding teams that don't have a female founder. So I think we've got some great science now. We've got some great stats. We do have venture capital firms and private equity who are actively looking for these deal opportunities. Okay. I think it's just really hard. I know people say it's a bit of a cop-out, but I do think that there's a pipeline problem. Like I actively try and meet with female founders and identify great female founders and support them and back them.
There's a lot out there.
Yeah, and I think, finding that talent pipeline, it's a really proactive thing that you have to go and do. And like there's some great, female-only venture funds now.
Okay.
But I think we need to see people back and fund ideas that make sense to them. And, it's the whole crisis of we hire in our likeness, right? Like we hire people who look like us, and just because we have more affinity with them, we understand their story. So I think it's a case of, until we get more female general partners at venture capital firms, who are more likely to back ideas that they understand or that they have, more of a sensitivity to as a female with capital to deploy. So I think it's kind of a systemic problem. And I also think, unfortunately, there's this physical fact that a lot of women take time out to go and have children. And unfortunately, at this point, there is no way to delay the female child rearing and years to be later. So if you take a bunch of women out of the workforce from whatever it might be, 29 to 35, 37, 38, 39, whatever, if you're taking a big chunk of time out of your career to go and have children, that's just incompatible with the founder lifestyle. And that's really, I don't think anyone has a solution to that. Do
you have any advice for the female founders out there that are scared to go into the market? Like, I get it. It's this masculine energy. It's walking into these boardrooms. It's a scary tactic. But with social media now, they can build their brand. They can make a lot of money very quickly. Do you have any advice for the young female founders out there that, maybe a little bit scared to walk through that door?
Yeah, I think I remember feeling really intimidated by, there was so much jargon and so many acronyms, like, even the CAC, LTV, MVP, all of these things that I was like, term sheet, deal memo, I was like, oh my God, I don't know what all of these things are. And that in itself could just be really, and you're like, I don't know, I'm not equipped to be here. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not qualified enough to be here. And I think maybe that's more prevalent in a female founder, like that self-doubt and wanting to have, I think it's like if a male has 3 out of 5 attributes, they apply for the job. If a female only, it doesn't have all 5, they won't apply. So I think it comes back to that, like, backing yourself a little bit more. And also just in this day and age, as I said before, there's so much publicly available information. Like You can get access to standard term sheets online. You can really educate yourself so you feel more comfortable in those rooms and more confident, and then make use of the resources that are out there. There's so many venture funds have like female founder hours. They have programs to go through. Fishburners that I'm on the board of has an amazing female founder support network and Ascent programs to really try and support female founders and tip that balance so that we have more coming out into the ecosystem.
Awesome. Great advice. Taryn, thank you so much for the conversation.
My absolute pleasure.
That was absolutely awesome.
Thank you for having
me. And hopefully
me.
for all the female founders out there, all the founders in general, she is living proof that it can be done over and over again. Taryn, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. What an incredible conversation with Taryn Williams. From spotting inefficiencies as a 21-year-old and turning them into a thriving business, to raising capital and building a platform used by tens of thousands of people, to selling her own companies and starting again with a fresh perspective. Her story is proof that building never really stops. If you took something away from today's chat, share this episode with another founder who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying Never Not Building, hit follow so you don't miss the next one. Taryn, thank you for showing us what resilience, vision, and reinvention really looks like. Until next time, keep building.